Hi, everybody. We are here today. We're going to talk a little bit about what was going on in America during the war. So the first thing we're looking at today is what the big idea of the set of notes is, and that is, how did the United States react at home once we entered the war? And there's a bunch of U.S. Tennessee standards we're hitting here. We're hitting 63, which deals specifically with whether or not it was constitutional and morally right for us to put Japanese Americans into our own form of relocation or concentration camps. U.S. 64 deals with women entering the workforce, Rosie the Riveter, as well as women serving in the armed forces. U.S. 65 deals with the impact of World War II on economic and social conditions for minority groups, particularly African Americans. And U.S. 66 deals with a bunch of stuff. The home front, rationing, bond drives, movement of people into cities, and the Bracero program. Okay. So the first thing we're going to talk about is mass mobilization. When the war started, after Pearl Harbor, when we are going into the war, 16 million Americans joined the armed forces. And of those 16 million, over 350,000 of them are women. And there's a lot of different programs in the armed forces that are going to accept women. There's the WWII, the WAVE, the SPARS, and the WASPs, just to name a few. Now they are when they serve, they're going to serve in non-combat roles. They're going to be nurses, clerks or secretaries, radio operators, pilots. But let's go over what these acronyms mean. Okay, a WAC stands for Women's Auxiliary Army Corps. So that's the Army group for women. Then you have the WAVES, which is the Women Accepted for Voluntary Emergency Service. Okay, these are policemen, firefighters, the National Guard. Okay, then you have the SPARS, which is our Coast Guard version of it. They are U.S. Coast Guard Reserve. And SPAR actually stands for the Coast Guard's motto, Semper Paratus, which means always ready. And then you have the WASPs, or the Women Air Force Service Pilots. Okay, so you've got the WWII, which is the Army, the WAVES, which is the Navy and the other volunteer services, the SPARS, which is the Coast Guard, and the WASPs, which is the Air Force. And they are all going to be integral to running the military at home. WAVES and SPARS, okay, this is a lot of the propaganda done towards that, okay. These are the excuse me, this is a group of WAVES in an R4D transport plane. So obviously it's a little different for women in the military now. For one, women in the military today can wear pants, and they couldn't back then. So, there's a little bit of an issue. But they're going to serve, and they're going to serve well. Okay. They do receive the title of veteran because they were in the military during a war. You've got the WASP, which are the service pilots. They're not flying combat missions, but they do a lot of the flying of the supply planes. Okay. You got this little emblem that was drawn for them by Walt Disney. I always thought that was super cute. All right. Then you have the WAC, the Women's Auxiliary Army Corps. They are very much trained to do the fighting. Okay. They go through the same basic training as the men do. They learn to fire all the same weapons. That's a woman with I want to call it a bazooka, but I know it's not called a bazooka. I'll think of the name of it in class. I can't remember it right now. But they go through all of this. Okay. So we have a big army. We weren't exactly ready to enter the war yet because we had that surprise attack. So what are we going to do? And we do what we did in World War I. We get the factories to start making everything that the military needs. Only there's a big difference between World War I and World War II. In World War I, All the war production is going to be voluntary. In World War II, it will not. In World War II, almost all of the war production that happens in civilian factories is going to become mandatory, which means the government is making factories change what they make. Um, Eastman, Tennessee, the Kodak company that was usually making that used to make film for cameras. Um, During World War II, it was mandated that they make explosives instead because they had all the same chemicals on hand. So factories start making everything for the military: trucks, tanks, bullets, armor, rations. If they can find a way to use your factory to make something for the military, they're going to. And that war production is going to lead to a I don't want to say shortage, but it's going to lead to a fear of a shortage for everybody else. So you have the Office of Price Administration, or the OPA, and they actually institute rationing for World War One. So in World War One, there was uh, voluntary rationing. Okay, so you had those meatless, wheatless, and sweetless days where people were asked to please limit what you ate so there would be enough left over for the troops. Once again, in World War II, we didn't have a year to get ready like we did in World War I. In World War II, we went to war immediately. And because of that, we don't have time to prepare ourselves for food shortages. So the government just steps in and says, okay, we're rationing it. This is what you get, and this is it. And rationing is going to be used to fight inflation by freezing prices. These videos always make me yawn. Okay. What this does, okay, what freezing inflation means is the government comes in and says, whatever you're charging now, that's what you're charging. You cannot raise your prices. Okay. And that does two things. One, it keeps the price at a point where everyone can afford it. Because once companies find out that their goods are going to be rationed and their goods are going to be in short supply, the law of supply and demand says that when your supply is low, you should be able to raise your prices. Okay, because everyone wants it and there's not enough to go around. Well, that just means the rich people are going to get it and the poor people aren't. So they freeze prices. And then to make sure everyone got kind of a fair shake at whatever's available, each family had to register for a ration book. Actually, there were 4 or 5 of them in America. So you had a gas ration book. You had a ration book that was for like all the meats and the oils and the fats. And you had another ration book that was for canned fruits and vegetables and frozen fruits and vegetables. And what this does is whenever you would go and buy your goods, the ration board had decided how much of each thing your family needed or your family could survive on. So if you were given, 50 points of meat for 3 months, you could only buy 50 points worth of meat. So you would go through the grocery store and you would look and you would see, ground beef or whatever. A pound of ground beef was worth 5 points. So you had to be able to go through and figure out how to stretch that because you could not go over your ration for that 3-month period. So when you'd shop, you would buy everything and the grocer would ring everything up and you would pay cash for whatever your goods you were buying, but you also had to turn over that many points worth of your ration coupons. Okay. You get little coupons that they'd come in these books. And if you'd open the books up, they have little coupons that look like stamps that you would rip out and give. Now, they established fixed allotments. You were given each person in your family, according to their age, sex, and weight, was given a certain amount of each thing. Gas was highly rationed in America. They set the recommended speed limit at 35 miles an hour. And they figured if you had a car, they figured out the exact distance between your house and your job. And if you stuck very, very strictly to that 35 mile an hour speed limit, you might be lucky enough to have just a little bit of gas left over at the end of the month that you could go and visit your family with, or nearby friends. But it was just enough to get you to work and back. And people were asked to pay no more than top legal prices. That's referring to the black market, because you are going to have people who maybe they'll buy everything that they're rationed and then they don't use it. And people will start selling it on the sly under the table. So they'll have leftover canned goods or they'll have leftover meat. In America, leftover gas was a big thing on the black market. So if you had a leftover gas coupon and you hadn't used it yet, you could charge like 3 times what the gas was worth just to give someone just someone to buy that gas coupon off you. So this is a pledge against that black market. You're not going to pay more than top legal price, and you're not going to accept any ration goods without giving up a ration stamp for it. Now, as far as Americans go, there are jobs everywhere. America was considered at full employment, which means everybody who wanted a job could find one. Like we talked about this before, World War II is what ends the Great Depression. Because we are at full employment, everyone is making a job. There's things for you to do. Okay. During the war, we built more than 70,000 ships, more than 100,000 airplanes, which, by the way, was more airplanes than all 3 of the Axis countries combined. So remember, the Axis countries were Germany, Italy, and hopefully somebody said Japan. That's the 3rd one. Okay. So we made more airplanes during the war than all 3 of those countries combined. We made more than 120,000 tanks, and we made millions and millions of guns. And I can't even give you a number on how many bullets, like just an insane amount of bullets. Okay. Women are going to join the workforce. More than 6 million women entered the workforce for the first time. Now, these are women who had been stay-at-home mothers. They had never had a job before in their life, and now they're going to go to work, which is going to create a whole new issue America had never had to deal with before, and that was childcare. Okay. Remember, these women had spent their lives as stay-at-home moms watching their kids. And so now they're at work. What are they going to do with their kids? So childcare is going to become the biggest issue for most women. And you're going to see a lot of businesses actually opening up daycares on site. So whenever you go into work at your factory, there's a room somewhere where there's a woman who's paid just to watch everyone's kids. Women are going to make up more than 1/3 of the total workforce in the United States, which at the time was huge. Okay. So you see a lot of this, do the job he left behind, because every business is making something for the war effort. We can't afford to have jobs not filled, because every job not filled is less product that's being made for the war effort. You're going to see propaganda campaigns featuring Rosie the Riveter. Okay. Talking about, we can do it. We just got to roll up our sleeves just like a man and go in and work. And this is an advertising campaign that's going to encourage women to take those factory jobs. And you're going to see kind of this disillusionment in the late 40s, early 50s after the war, when women are asked to give up these jobs, right? Because they were begged to take them in the first place. And a lot of women liked working. They liked the independence it gave them. And now they're expected just to go back to being housewives and mothers. And most of them are going to do it. But there are a lot of women after World War II that refuse. They're going to keep those jobs. The population is going to shift. Okay, you're going to have huge cities and towns booming, like just being created almost out of nothing, where nothing was there before, especially whenever you get defense industries involved. So any factory that's making tanks or planes, tanks, anything like that, you're going to have the populations of those cities and towns just double or triple within a couple of weeks, maybe a month, because the jobs are available there. And remember, it's the Great Depression. People will go where there's a job. They will find a way to get there. Now, most of these cities and towns are going to be on the coastlines of America, because if we're making military goods, if we're making boats, we don't want to be making them in like Ohio when there's no outlet to the ocean, right? You want the boats to be near the sea. You want the tanks and the planes to be near the boats so you can get them where they need to go. So a lot of these defense industries are going to be on the coast, except for the Manhattan Project ones, which we will talk about more whenever we get into specifically what Tennessee did, because we'll talk about Oak Ridge then. Congress of Racial Equality. A lot of walls are going to be put up in front of minorities during this. Yes, everyone has a job, but having a job does not necessarily mean everyone around you treats you equally. So you're going to see a lot of especially African American men that are being discriminated against in their jobs. They're given a job, but they're often given the crappiest job. They're forced to work more hours for less pay. And that's not right. And then whenever they're not at their job, they still face a lot of discrimination in businesses where businesses won't sell to you if you're black. Or if you do by chance make enough money to want to take, your girlfriend to a movie on Saturday, you have to pay your quarter or your nickel to get into the movie, and then you have to walk around the back of the building and come in the back door and go up the back steps to the crow's nest because black people aren't allowed to walk through a white person's lobby. You get a lot of that. And you're going to see another major civil rights organization come to fruition in the 1940s called CORE. It stands for the Congress of Racial Equality. It was founded by a man named James Farmer, specifically to confront urban segregation. So it's we talked about this in the 1920s. Whenever you'd have people like in Chicago during the Great Migration, where they would sign those pledges that they wouldn't rent or sell their land or their apartments to black people. So black people are kind of forced into certain neighborhoods, even though there's no law saying that they're supposed to be segregated. You're going to see a lot of action against that. Now, CORE is famous. Write this down. Okay. CORE is famous because they're the ones that give Martin Luther King and his movement in the late 50s, early 60s, the idea for the sit-ins. That where you go in and peacefully just sit down. You break the rule of black people aren't supposed to be here by just going in and sitting down. You don't fight back. You don't spew hatred. You don't curse and fight and argue. You just sit there and are polite. And the whole goal of a sit-in is to bring attention to the violence that is done upon you when all you're doing is sitting there. So it takes quite a bit of bravery to be able to put up with what they put up with in order to get the attention that needed to be brought to this. Another minority group that's going to have some problems. You have Japanese Americans are forced into guarded camps. We called them relocation camps. Most Japanese Americans were in California or on the West Coast. And there was a fear in America that Japanese Americans were somehow all loyal to Japan. And after Pearl Harbor, we were afraid that they were going to, get together and have some kind of terrorist attack in mainland America. So all Japanese Americans were looked at by most people as enemies. So the American government passed a law saying that people of Japanese American descent, even if you were born in America and have been an American citizen your whole life, you are forced to give up everything you have and get on a bus or a train, and you are sent to a relocation camp. A lot of these relocation camps are in places nobody else wanted to live. They're in the deserts. They're in the swamps of Arkansas. They are in the worst land that nobody else wants, and that's where you're going to have to go live. Most people who are told they have to move, they're given 48 hours. You have 2 days. Some had less than that. Some, the cops just knocked on your door and you left. You had 48 hours to sell everything you had or you lost it. You were allowed whatever luggage you could carry. So you couldn't bring a whole bunch of extra stuff with you. If you couldn't carry it, it got left behind. So if you couldn't sell your house within 48 hours, it was forfeited. You lost it. Government took it from you. It wasn't yours anymore. These people are stripped of their civil liberties. They are not allowed to fight it in a court. They are not allowed habeas corpus or due process. It's just gone. And it's going to be fought. There's going to be a major Supreme Court case called Korematsu v. the United States. A Japanese American named Fred Korematsu, he's going to sue the United States saying that the United States is violating his First Amendment rights. It's violating his Fifth Amendment rights to due process. It's violating his rights that says the government cannot take away your possessions without due process. And the government's doing all this, and it goes all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court rules that the America can do this. It said that America could relocate Japanese Americans. It is justified because there was a reasonable fear that some harm would be done. Okay. Now they don't. At the time, it was clear that the harm they were afraid that would be done was Japanese Americans doing harm to America, the country. Today, you'll see a lot of people trying to, it's called whitewashing history when you make it sound better than it really was. You'll see a lot of people try to tell you that we did this to protect Japanese Americans, that there was so much fear and so much hatred against them that we had to get them away from where they lived so people wouldn't hurt them. I've heard that a lot, and it's not true. Okay, this was not us trying to protect Japanese Americans. This was us being afraid Japanese Americans were going to turn on America. Okay. And Japanese Americans, they're going to show their loyalty. A lot of men are going to leave the internment camps to prove their loyalty in battle. Now, at the beginning of the war, when Pearl Harbor happened and we entered World War II, you're going to see a lot of Japanese Americans try to enlist in the army because they're Americans and they cannot believe we've just been attacked and they want to go serve for America because America, right? It's the same reason why young men signed up for the military the day after 9/11 or on the day of 9/11. We were attacked. This is our country. You don't do this to us and get away with it. But a lot of the Japanese Americans that tried to enlist right after Pearl Harbor, they're turned away. The government wouldn't take them. They called them undesirables. Sound familiar? That's what Hitler called the Jews. Okay. We called them undesirables. We didn't want them in the military. The longer the war went on, the more people we needed, and we started recruiting Japanese Americans. We went to these camps, and you were given these long questionnaires to sign, and it was you were basically left with the impression that if you didn't enlist, you would be considered a traitor. And there were some of these questions, these questionnaires, that if you answered a question, it didn't matter if you answered yes or no. Depending on how they wanted to interpret the question, you could be seen as a traitor. So you've got a lot of this. But you do have Japanese Americans who are finally allowed to join. One of the major units you need to know is the 442nd. It is the most decorated unit in all of World War II. And it is an all Japanese American unit. That we segregated Japanese Americans in World War II, just like we segregated Black Americans in World War I. These men took on some of the most dangerous missions. Now they're serving in Europe because we don't trust them enough to send them to Japan, because there's still that underlying fear that once they get to Japan, they'll turn on America. So they go and they serve in Europe. And of the men who served in the 442nd, you have 21 Congressional Medals of Honor. I mean, you have to do something way above and beyond the Call of Duty to get a Medal of Honor. I mean, think of what Alvin C. York did. So you have to do that level of something to get the Medal of Honor, and they got 21 of them. The men in this unit got 52 Distinguished Service Crosses, 560 Silver Stars, 9,486 Purple Hearts. You get a Purple Heart every time you're wounded. Okay? Wounded in battle. Like, you can't cut your finger. They're not going to give you a Purple Heart for that, but wounded in battle. You're going to see a lot of recruiting and discrimination. Some minorities are going to question whether or not it's their war to fight. Should we even get involved in this? You had a Black soldier that served in the Pacific campaign that gave this quote to a magazine. He said, "Just carve on my tombstone, here lies a Black man killed fighting a yellow man for the protection of a white man." Okay. Yellow man at this time meant Asian. So despite this discrimination, you're going to get a lot of minorities joining the military. Almost 1 million African Americans served, over 300,000 Mexican Americans served, 50,000 Asian Americans, 25,000 Native Americans served. Quite a few of those Native Americans are going to be what was called wind talkers. Are a lot of our military code was done in a native language that had never actually been written down before. So it was impossible for the Germans to crack the code because there was a code and then it was in another language. So like instead of tank, the word was turtle, but it wasn't it wasn't the English word for turtle. It was the Native American word for turtle. So you're going to have all that. There is one more program here that I haven't put a slide up, but you do need to know. Speaking of Mexican Americans here, it's the Bracero program. Bracero. We had a problem finding farm workers to help grow all the food during the war because so many men were off at war. So we started the Bracero program, which is the beginning of our migrant worker program in America. We allowed these braceros, or Mexican cowboys, Mexican farmers, to come into America during planting and harvesting season. So they came in and worked as migrant farmers, got their money, and then went back to Mexico during the off season, and then came back again the next year. And that is what the Bracero program is going to be. And that is it.